Hey, friend. Welcome back to Studio Notes, the space where I share things I've been learning and discovering along the way in my creative life, and I hope some of it helps you too. Today's note is for anyone who's been curious about digital art, but maybe doesn't have access to all the tools for it right now, because that's exactly where I've been. For a while, I've heard so much about Procreate. It feels like it comes up in almost every creative space, and I've definitely been interested in trying it, but I don't have an iPad right now, and that's just not something I can invest in at the moment. So instead of waiting, I decided to start looking into alternatives that would work with what I do have, which is a Samsung tablet, and that process actually took a little time. I went back and forth between a few different apps, and one of the main ones I was considering was Clip Studio Paint because it's something I've used before, so there was already a level of familiarity there. But while I was researching, I kept coming across this app called High Paint, and what stood out to me was how many people were saying that the interface felt similar to Procreate, more simple, more user friendly. And even though I've never actually used Procreate myself, my thinking was if I ever do take a class or learn it in the future, maybe using something with a similar layout now could make that transition a little easier. So I decided to give High Paint a try. And honestly, I'm still learning it. I don't know everything it can do yet, but I'm sure it doesn't have all the same features as Procreate, but it's been a really good starting point. Right now, I've mostly been using it to create mandalas, and there's a symmetry tool in the app that's been really helpful for that. It makes the whole process feel a little bit smoother, especially when I'm just trying to explore and not overthink things. I've also used it in the early stages of my brand refresh, sketching out ideas for my logo and even playing around with my podcast cover. Nothing super polished, but it does allow me to get some ideas out. The free version does have ads, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's still been worth using to learn the basics. And from what I've seen, the paid version is pretty affordable and locks some extra features like a pattern tool that lets you turn your designs into repeating patterns with just a click, which sounds really fun. So that's something I might explore here soon. I'll also be honest in saying that I'm still someone who prefers traditional art most of the time. I like the feel of it, the texture, the hands on process, but there's moments where having a digital option is really helpful, and it's nice to know I have something I can turn to that works with me instead of against me. I think more than anything, this whole experience reminds me that you don't have to wait for the perfect setup to start creating. You don't need the most expensive tools or the ideal situation. Sometimes it's just about finding an option that works for you where you're at right now and letting that be enough. This isn't sponsored or anything like that, just something I took time to research, try out, and figure out for myself, and something I wish I had known about sooner. So, if you're in a similar spot and you've been curious about digital art but don't have access to Procreate, this might be something worth trying. And of course, it's different for everyone. I mean, we're all looking for different tools for our toolbox. So if you've tried High Paint, I'd love to know what you think. Or if you found another app that you really like, especially something affordable or even free, I'd love to hear about that too. I feel like this is one of those areas where we can really help each other out by sharing what's working and possibly what's not. Because at the end of the day, these studio notes are just that little things I've come across along the way that might make someone else's path a little easier. There have definitely been times where I wish I had something like this when I was starting out. So, if this saves you a little time or helps you get started sooner, that makes me really happy. Anyways, thanks so much for spending this studio note with me. And as always, keep creating whatever way feels good to you. Goodbye for now.